I wanted all that to be done. And I say now to the Australian government, damn it, wake up. You don't need any more warnings. You've already received enough.
Prime Minister Albanese, shame on you. And I'd like to give a message in English to our brothers and sisters in Australia. We stand with you. We stand with you. We feel your pain as you have felt our pain during difficult times, and especially in the past 2 years. From here in the Knesset, I assure you, the state of Israel is the Jewish people's homeland and will continue to support every Jewish community around the world. We strongly oppose the policies of the Australian government that have allowed for anti-Semitism disguised as anti-Zionism to grow unchecked on the streets of Australia. For months, for too many months, the authorities have legitimized public demonstrations of hatred against Jews, violent rallies against Israel, attacks on synagogues and Jewish schools, anti-Semitic messaging online, and so much more. Only recently, the Australian Prime Minister proudly declared that his country recognized a so-called State of Palestine. What message does this send to radical Islamist forces when after October 7th, you recognize a Palestinian state? When you support terror, don't be surprised when you get terror in your backyard. When you justify Hamas's terror in Israel's south, you incentivize terror against Jews in Sydney, Melbourne, and Perth. Prime Minister Albanese, shame on you.
Benjamin Netanyahu so critical of the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese?
Well, namaste to you and your viewers as well. The reason that the Prime Minister is so critical of the Australian Prime Minister Albanese is because Prime Minister Albanese in Australia has not only stood by, he's enabled violent assaults against Jews for the past 2 years since October 7th. You know, on October 9th, you had a crowd of people standing by the Sydney Opera Building screaming Jews to the gas, 2 days after the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. And the crowd wasn't dispersed by Australian authorities. The crowd openly calling for the genocide of Jews in Australia and everywhere else and threatening and taunting Australian Jews. Instead, the Australian authorities told the Jews to stay home, to disperse, to walk away, and allowed this mob to seed and to have its message of genocide be legitimized in Australia. And since then, we have seen just attack after attack after attack, and each time, they're warned, we tell them, we warn them, and they don't do anything. Instead, the Australian government responded to October 7th, you know how? By giving $25 million to Gaza, by giving $25 million to Hamas. This is what the Albanese government has been doing since the very beginning of the war, and accusing us of genocide even before we even began operating on the ground practically. So, we're talking about an administration in Canberra that has been enabling, facilitating the terrorization of Jews in Australia at the same time that it's condemning Israel as some sort of an outlaw nation for actually standing up to the terrorism that, as we warned would happen, caused the massacre yesterday on Bondi Beach in Sydney. That's why he's critical, because Australian Prime Minister Albanese was warned repeatedly. We warned him. The Jews of Australia warned him, and he didn't listen. Instead, he continued to empower the Palestinians, yes, by recognizing a state of Palestine. You know what? This woman came to Bondi Beach today, in the aftermath of the massacres, when you have the Jewish community milling about mourning what had just befell it, and she came surrounded by police guards, armed in a keffiyeh and Free Palestine garb, in order to taunt the Jews. And she was protected. She came in there with full police protection. So it wasn't her message. It was the message of the Sydney police authorities that said Jews aren't even allowed to mourn in quiet and tranquility. We're not going to allow that to happen. We're going to allow this woman to come in and poke her finger in their eyes just hours before they've even started burying the dead, and when you still have dozens of people fighting for their lives in area hospitals.
The police commissioner, how many police were at Bondi Beach at the Hanukkah festival at the time when the shooting took place?
Yes, we've spoken to police about it, of course.
Can you tell us that answer?
Well, the police were tasked with being on the site during the festival. My understanding is that there were two in the park during or at the beginning of the shooting, the assassinations.
Just two police officers.
And there were police in the vicinity. So a patrol car pulled up within moments of the firing beginning. So I guess it's difficult for me to give you a final number, as it is with police, because they need to work out where scores of police were at exactly 6:46 or thereabouts when the shooting began. And I think that there's a sense that, well, if we give a misleading number now, either we'll have to retract it or add to it at a certain point. But what I'm trying to say is I'm not trying to be coy here, but that's the circumstances relating to it.
When we've seen the pro-Palestinian protests every other week in the city, there are dozens, if not hundreds, of police officers. So why was a high-risk event like the Hanukkah festival have so limited police resources that, you know, at the time of the shooting, only two on site?
Look, a couple of things, Shari. First of all, the hundreds of police at pro-Palestinian marches are not there to protect the protesters. They're in many cases posted at the Great Synagogue, for example, or Jewish places of business, or to ensure that the route isn't compromised and we don't have another situation where the protest ends up on the forecourt of the Opera House during
two physically on site and then another cop car pulled up. I mean, two on site. That is a horrifying thought, that there was more than 1,000 Australian Jews left so vulnerable, you know, like sitting ducks or lambs to the slaughter, as Alex Richardson put it to me last night.
Yeah, look, I understand, of course. I mean, we've had a terrible, terrible tragedy. We've had the murder of Jewish Australians in the eastern suburbs. It's
police with only two on site.
Well, a couple of things. I mean, I think it's important to note that police, obviously, when the shooting began, did engage the shooters.